started with a stupid pinky swear made on the roof of our college dorm, both of us half-drunk on cheap whiskey and post-finals adrenaline. "If we're both still single at 30, I said, slurring a little, "we meet here. No questions, no excuses." Luca grinned at me, that lazy, lopsided smile that made people fall for him even when they shouldn't. "What happens when we meet? You proposing to me or something?" "I might," I said, trying to sound like I was joking. He held out his pinky. "Deal, 30, right here." We locked fingers under the string lights someone had hung across the rooftop. The city buzzed beneath us, loud and indifferent. Then life happened. Graduation. Jobs. Cities. Relationships that never quite stuck. I moved to Denver, he stayed in Boston. We texted on and off, usually around birthdays or holidays. Every few months I'd get a random meme from him at 2 a.m. No caption. Just a small window into a life I wasn't part of anymore. I dated. So did he. From what I could tell, neither of us ever found someone worth writing home about, but I never asked too much. And he never offered. And now here I am, exactly 30 years old, sitting on the rooftop of the building we used to live in, alone. The whiskey isn't cheap anymore, but it still burns going down. I check my phone again. 9:12 p.m. No message. No call. I try not to feel like an idiot. Maybe it was just a college thing. Maybe he doesn't even remember. I'm about to leave when I hear the metal door creak open behind me. I turn, already telling myself it's someone else. A resident or a random guest. But it's him. Luca. He's wearing a black hoodie and jeans, a backpack slung over one shoulder. His hair's shorter than I remember. There's stubble on his jaw now, and he looks tired, like he's just stepped off a red-eye flight. But it's him. Same dark eyes. Same crooked smile. "You thought I'd forget," he says, setting his bag down. "You really thought I'd forget that promise?" I can't speak. I'm not sure if it's the whiskey or the way my heart just jumped into my throat. He walks over slowly and sits beside me on the edge of the roof. We're quiet for a moment, the hum of the city filling the air. "I almost didn't come," he says finally. "Had to cancel a work thing. Rebook my flight twice." I glance over. "But you did." He nods, then reaches into his backpack and pulls out something wrapped in a napkin, a half-squashed cupcake with a candle sticking out of it. "For the birthday boy," he says. I laugh and it comes out shaky. He lights the candle with a lighter from his pocket. "Make a wish." I look at the flame, then at him. "I already got what I wanted," I say quietly. He doesn't smile this time. He just looks at me like he's trying to figure out if I'm serious. And I am. More serious than I've ever been. "Damn," he says, voice low. "Me too." We sat there for a while after that, not saying much, just letting the night sit between us. The cupcake slowly collapsed in its wrapper between us. Forgotten, the flame long snuffed out by the wind. I wanted to say something, anything, to bridge the years between now and then. But the truth is, I didn't know how to start. Luca looked the same in some ways, but he also didn't. There was something quieter in him, a kind of heaviness behind his eyes. I wondered if I had that too. I probably did. "You remember that night?" I finally asked, watching him closely. He nodded, leaning back on his hands. "How could I forget?" "You were wearing that ugly flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. I think you thought it made you look edgy." It did make me look edgy. "It made you look like a hungover camp counselor." I laughed, despite myself. "You were wearing a Red Sox hoodie with pizza grease on the front." He grinned. Some things never change. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that only comes with people who've known each other too long to need to fill every gap. So, I said, keeping my voice light, "Do we get married now? Or is there, like, a second pinky swear involved?" Luca raised an eyebrow. "Pretty sure we skipped the part where we lived together in a tropical city and adopt a dog named Bruce." "Right," I said. "The dog. Can't forget Bruce." I still won naming rights. "You always said you'd name him after Bruce Willis." "Damn right. That man jumped out of a helicopter in Die Hard 4. He also did a talking baby movie." "And he made it work," Lucas said, tapping his chest. That's range. I smiled, but my stomach was tying itself in knots. I couldn't tell if this was just banter for him, or if he was feeling the same weight I was. The years, the timing, the possibility that this moment might mean something more than nostalgia. Luca pulled his knees up and wrapped his arms around them, suddenly serious. Truth is, I didn't think I'd be single at 30. Me either, I said. He glanced over. I had a thing. A guy. Lasted almost a year. What happened? He shrugged. We weren't right for each other. I think I knew that early on, but I kept pushing it. Thought maybe if I tried harder, it'd feel easier. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I get that. What about you? Some flings, nothing that stuck. I hesitated. I was seeing this guy Jordan for a few months. We had the same taste in music, same favorite dive bars, but he never looked at me like. I trailed off. The words got stuck. Luca looked at me. Like what? I shook my head. Like you used to look at people when you liked them, like it meant something. His face didn't change, but I could feel something shift in the air. Like we were standing too close to something flammable. He cleared his throat. You ever think about that night in senior year? There were a lot of nights. I knew which one he meant. The night we almost kissed? I asked. He nodded, barely. I've thought about it more than I should probably admit. I didn't look at him. I just stared at the skyline, the lights stretching out like a galaxy pretending to be a city. We were drunk, I said. It was late. He didn't answer right away. You pulled away. I got scared. Of me? No, I said quietly, of how badly I wanted it. Another silence, this one thicker. He leaned closer, just enough that I could feel his body heat. What if I said I still think about that? I turned my head toward him, finally meeting his eyes. They weren't teasing anymore. There was no joke waiting at the end of this sentence. I'd say, I whispered, you're not the only one. And then he kissed me. It wasn't wild or rushed. It was slow, careful, like he was testing if the door was still open after all these years. I kissed him back because I couldn't not. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Well, he said, breathless, that was overdue. Like 10 years overdue. I blame you for that. Of course you do. He smiled again, and I could see the boy he used to be, sitting on the floor of our dorm room, arguing about which Quentin Tarantino movie was overrated, stealing my snacks, dragging me out of bed at midnight to walk to the diner 2 blocks down, just because he couldn't sleep. The truth is, I never stopped loving him. I just figured he'd never love me back. Now he was sitting next to me, our knees touching, his eyes soft. Can I stay with you? He asked suddenly. What, tonight? No, like for a while, a week, maybe more. I need a break from Boston, and I want to see what this, he gestured between us, what this could actually look like. I felt my chest tighten. You want to crash on my couch and see if we're secretly soulmates? He chuckled. Something like that. I thought for a second, then nodded. Yeah, I said. You can stay. He reached over and laced our fingers together. 30's not such a bad age after all. Luca crashed on my couch that first night, which was more about pretending we were still being casual than anything else. He showed up with just a backpack and a half-dead phone charger, like this was some kind of spontaneous road trip instead of a 10-year reunion with real emotional weight behind it. I gave him a spare towel and a key to my place, and we both pretended this was normal. The next morning, I found him standing in my kitchen in his boxers and a wrinkled t-shirt, pouring cereal into a bowl like he'd always lived there. His hair was sticking up in 3 directions and he looked half asleep. Your almond milk expired, he said without looking up. Throw it out. He nodded, tossed it in the trash, then turned to me. You always this quiet in the morning? I shrugged, still waking up. You always this comfortable in someone else's apartment? He grinned. I was here for, 3 hours last night, and you already gave me a key. Don't act like I broke in. I shook my head and grabbed coffee. It was weird how quickly the rhythms came back. He made breakfast, I handled coffee. We passed each other in the kitchen without bumping elbows. We knew the right jokes to make. The ones we'd been building over a decade of half-finished texts and voice notes that ended in laughter. Later that day, we took a walk around the city. It was cold, early spring in Chicago, the kind that tricks you into thinking it's warm because the sun's out, then sucker punches you with wind when you turn a corner. Luca kept getting distracted by every dog that passed. I had to keep tugging him along like a human leash. "You ever think about getting one?" he asked, eyes fixed on a golden retriever tugging its owner into traffic. "A dog?" "Yeah. You always wanted one, right?" "Yeah, but works a lot, and traveling, and..." He looked at me. "You're allowed to have something to come home to, you know." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because part of me wasn't sure what he meant by that, if he was talking about dogs or something bigger. When we got back to the apartment, he threw himself onto my couch like it was his own bed. "You ever think about what it would have been like if we hadn't moved?" he asked, staring at the ceiling. "You mean if we had stayed in the same city?" He nodded. "I think about it too much," I said. He turned his head toward me. "What do you think would have happened?" I didn't want to say it out loud, but he looked like he needed me to, so I did. "I think we would have ended up together, eventually." There was a long pause. "Me too," he said. "I always thought I'd see you again before now. And then, every year that passed, I figured, maybe it's better this way. Less messy." "Is it messy now?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, just overdue. That night, we watched a movie on the couch. Some dumb action comedy that neither of us paid attention to. At some point, he shifted closer. Not a lot. Just enough that our legs touched. It was casual, but not. And I didn't move away. By the time the credits rolled, his head was on my shoulder, and my hand was resting against his thigh like it had been there forever. "I miss this," he murmured. "Me too." We didn't talk much more, just sat there quiet, the kind of quiet that felt full, like something unspoken was finally allowed to breathe. I didn't ask him to move into the bedroom that night, but I also didn't need to. When I got up to brush my teeth, he followed. No questions, no words. We climbed into bed like it was something we'd done 100 times. The room was dark. I could hear him breathing next to me. And I knew neither of us was sleeping. "I used to imagine this," he said quietly. "Us? Yeah. What it'd be like to wake up next to you. No more guessing." I turned toward him. He was staring at the ceiling. "I thought you didn't feel that way back then," I said. "I did," he whispered. "But I wasn't ready to be that person. I was scared." I reached for his hand under the blanket. He didn't flinch. He held on. "I'm not scared now," he added. "Me either." And then we just lay there. No need to fill the space. We had time now. For the first time in years, time didn't feel like something we were fighting against. We fell asleep like that. His hand in mine, a quiet between us that finally felt safe. Waking up next to him was quiet. Not some dramatic, earth-shattering moment. Just stillness. The kind where you open your eyes, and for a second forget what day it is, but not who's beside you. Luca was already awake, lying on his side with one arm bent under the pillow, watching me like he'd been doing it for a while. He had bedhead and morning breath and a crease across his cheek from my pillowcase, and he still looked better than anyone had a right to first thing in the morning. "Morning?" he said, voice rough. "Hey!" I blinked a few times, getting my bearings. "What time is it?" "Almost 8. "Why are you awake?" He smiled lazily. "Didn't want to waste the morning." I rolled onto my back, staring at the ceiling. There was something both surreal and weirdly normal about it. Like we'd just skipped years of build-up and landed right in the middle of something real. No games. No tiptoeing. "How'd you sleep?" I asked. He shifted a little closer, resting his chin near my shoulder. "Better than I have in months." I didn't want to read too much into that, but I also couldn't help it. He reached over, tracing a finger down my forearm, like he needed something to do with his hands. "You know, I was nervous about coming here." "Why?" "Because this Us, it could have gone so wrong, and I didn't want to ruin whatever thread we still had left. And now? I'm glad I came. I looked over at him. You think we're jumping into this too fast? Maybe, but I don't care. We lay there for a while, neither of us in a rush to start the day. Eventually, we rolled out of bed and made our way to the kitchen, where Luca insisted on making pancakes even though he clearly had no idea what he was doing. I ended up taking over halfway through, but he still hovered next to me, stealing chocolate chips from the bag and making faces every time I tried to pour the batter in perfect circles. "You're such a control freak," he teased. "You're a chaos gremlin. Better than being boring. You're burning the pan. Boring and mean." I nudged him with my hip, and he laughed, arms wrapping around me from behind without thinking. He rested his chin on my shoulder like he'd done it 1,000 times before. We ate at the counter, and for once, I didn't feel the need to fill the silence. It was easy, easier than I expected. Around noon, we took the train downtown to walk along the lakefront. The city was cold but beautiful. The kind of day where the sun pretends it's helping, but your ears are still numb. He bought us hot coffee from a food truck, and we sat on a bench overlooking the lake, bundled up, watching boats drift lazily across the water. "So," he said, sipping carefully, "what now?" I glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've done the whole reunion thing. We kissed, slept in the same bed, ate pancakes like a couple of suburban boyfriends. Now what?" I took a moment to answer. "I don't know." He nodded, but didn't look away. "I don't want this to be temporary." That caught me off guard. "I mean, it was supposed to be a joke, right?" he continued. "Two idiots on a rooftop at 20, making a promise we thought we'd never have to keep. But now we're here, and it doesn't feel like a joke." I stared out at the water. "It doesn't." He shifted on the bench, clearly nervous in a way I wasn't used to seeing from him. "I'm not saying we move in together tomorrow or adopt Bruce the dog by Friday. But I want to try. For real." I let that settle between us. Because even though I'd been wanting to hear something like that for years, hearing it now made everything feel terrifyingly real. "I'm in," I said quietly. "Whatever this is, I'm in." He smiled, relief washing over his face. "Good. Because I was definitely going to make it weird if you said no." "Oh, I know." We both laughed. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I just felt full, present. Later that evening, back at my apartment, we curled up on the couch and ordered takeout. Luca somehow convinced me to start watching a ridiculous sci-fi show he liked, full of bad CGI and dramatic voiceovers. "You'll thank me by episode 4, he said confidently. "Doubt it?" "You will. And then I'll have to say, 'I told you so,' which is really going to test our relationship. You already are." He grinned and leaned against me, head resting on my shoulder again, like it was his default setting. Halfway through the second episode, he fell asleep. I watched him for a while, letting my fingers drift across the sleeve of his sweatshirt. I used to dream about this moment. Wonder if it'd ever happen, if I'd ever get to have something quiet and real with him. And now that it was here, I realized something. It didn't feel like a dream at all. It felt like home. The first week felt like a soft blur. We didn't define anything, didn't lay down rules or timelines. We just coexisted, easily, in a way that scared me more than anything else, because it was good. So good that I kept waiting for something to go wrong. Luca settled into my apartment like it had been his all along. He left his toothbrush in my bathroom without asking, started loading the dishwasher wrong but consistently, and claimed the left side of the bed like it was fate. "I'm a left side sleeper," he explained one night, tossing his hoodie over a chair he never used. "So am I," I said. He glanced over. "Too bad, I got here first." I threw a pillow at him, but didn't argue. It was weirdly comforting, watching his routines unfold, realizing that they didn't clash with mine, they fit. Even our silences matched. On Thursday, we went grocery shopping together for the first time, which felt like more of a commitment than sharing a bed. I watched him study cereal boxes like he was choosing stocks, then toss 4 different types of granola into the cart. "You planning on opening a breakfast bar?" I asked. "I believe in options. You also believe in blocking the entire aisle." He ignored me and added honey, 2 types of tea, and a box of protein bars that he'd probably never eat. At checkout, the cashier looked between us and smiled in that way people do when they're trying to figure out if you're a couple. I felt myself tense a little. Old habit, but Luca just leaned against the cart, yawned dramatically, and said, "Do you want to cook tonight or should I?" The cashier raised an eyebrow. "Y'all live together?" Luca didn't even blink. "Pretty much." I smiled, but inside, something twisted in my chest. Half panic, half hope. Because we were falling into something so fast and so naturally that it felt like we'd been doing it forever. After dinner that night, which Luca attempted to cook but burned halfway through, so I took over while he apologized with wine and kisses to the back of my neck. We lay in bed and talked. Not just about us, about life. He told me about his job, how he'd been feeling stuck in Boston, how the work wasn't what he thought it'd be, how the last year had felt like someone else was driving his life. "You know what it's like," he said. "It's like I built this whole track, and the train's moving, but I don't even like the destination." I nodded. "Yeah, I've felt that." "You ever think about leaving Chicago?" "Sometimes. But then I think, leave and go where? To what?" He looked at me. "Maybe it's not about where. Maybe it's who." That stuck with me. The next morning, I woke up early and couldn't fall back asleep. I lay there watching him breathe, hair a mess, his mouth slightly open, blanket half off his legs. He looked peaceful. He looked like a life I wanted. And I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. I didn't just want him here for a week or a month. I wanted him to stay. We had lunch with my friends that weekend. I hadn't told anyone about us yet, not because I was hiding it, but because I didn't know what it was. But when we showed up together, shared a plate of nachos without thinking, and Luca casually rested his hand on my knee under the table, I realized it was obvious. "Okay," Sarah said, halfway through her margarita. "Am I missing something here?" Luca raised an eyebrow. "Like?" She pointed between us. "This. The energy. The 'we definitely sleep in the same bed' vibes." I froze, but Luca just laughed. "He made me pancakes. It's serious." My face went red. I hadn't even told her yet, and now it was out in the open. But weirdly, I felt relieved. By the end of the meal, Sarah had cornered me while Luca stepped out to take a call. "So?" she asked, arms crossed, waiting. I sighed. "We made a pact in college. If we were both still single at 30, we'd meet back up, and now we're here." Her face softened. "You like him?" I nodded. "You think he's staying?" I looked at the door, then back at her. "I hope so." That night, as we walked home, I finally asked, "Are you going back to Boston?" Lucas stuffed his hands in his coat pockets. "My return flight is in 2 days." My chest tightened. "And?" He glanced sideways at me, then stopped walking. "I was hoping you'd ask me to change it." I blinked. "You don't have to," he added quickly. "But if you want me here, I'll stay. I mean, I'll still need to figure out work and stuff, but I don't want to leave. Not yet." I took a step closer. "I want you to stay." He smiled. "Then I'm not going anywhere." And just like that, everything shifted. We walked the rest of the way home in silence, fingers brushing, until they found each other. He didn't fly back. And for the first time in years, I stopped planning an exit. Luca never officially moved in. He just never left. His suitcase stayed by the closet for a week, then migrated to the bedroom corner, and eventually, his clothes started appearing in drawers I'd cleared without even realizing I was making space. He didn't announce it, and I didn't ask. It just happened, the same way mornings with him became normal, the same way I'd look up while cooking and find him sitting on the counter, eating grapes and watching me like I was a show he'd been waiting to binge. There was something dangerous in how easy it felt, something reckless and real. Some nights, we stayed up late on the couch, half drunk on red wine, watching movies we'd seen 10 times. He'd lie with his head on my chest, fingers tracing absent patterns over my shirt. I'd pretend not to be completely consumed by the way his body fit next to mine. It wasn't always perfect. We clashed over little things. How I loaded the dishwasher too methodically. How he left socks everywhere like some kind of scavenger hunt. He snored. I slept diagonally. He played music too loud in the morning. I left half-opened mail scattered across the kitchen table. But the fights never lasted. We argued like people who knew how to come back together. One night, after a particularly tense day, nothing major, just a long string of minor annoyances that built up into a passive-aggressive standoff about takeout, we found ourselves standing on opposite sides of the living room, arms crossed. "I'm not mad," I said, clearly mad. He raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because you've been closing cabinets like they insulted your mother." "Don't. I'm just saying." "You never clean up the coffee grounds," I snapped. "Like, how hard is it to wipe the damn counter?" He blinked, caught off guard by how fast I escalated. "Okay. Noted." We stared at each other. I could feel the tension buzzing in the space between us. Then he sighed, stepped forward, and wrapped his arms around me. "I hate fighting with you," he mumbled into my neck. I melted instantly. "Me too." He pulled back, eyes soft. "But I also love that we can. And not fall apart." I nodded, resting my forehead against his. "We're figuring it out." We are. And we were. We learned each other's rhythms. What buttons not to push. When to give space. When to lean in. He started leaving me notes on the bathroom mirror in dry erase marker. Stupid things like, "You snore like a baby walrus," or "Today's outfit rating, 8.3/10. I left sticky notes on his laptop. "Buy bread. You looked hot yesterday. Stop using my face wash, you gremlin." We weren't building a fairy tale. We were building something real. A few weeks after he'd not officially moved in, we had dinner with my parents. That was a new layer of weird. They'd met Luca before, back in college, when he was just my roommate's friend, or the guy who always showed up to barbecues with weird beer. But now it was different. Now he was sitting across the table from them, holding my hand under the napkin, talking about potentially finding freelance work in Chicago. My mom, ever the polite interrogator, gave me that look over dessert, the one that said, "Is this serious?" I nodded, subtly. Later, when we were in the car driving home, Luca asked, "Did your mom just mentally measure me for a wedding tux? She does that with everyone." She asked if I liked lavender. She likes themes. "Are you the theme?" I snorted. I think she's just happy I brought someone home who uses full sentences and doesn't own a snake. He laughed and leaned his head back against the seat, smiling at the ceiling like he didn't know what to do with how good this all felt. "You think they like me?" he asked after a pause. "I think they already think we're married." He grinned. "You say that like it's a bad thing." I didn't answer, but my heart beat a little faster. Back at the apartment, as we kicked off our shoes and fell into our usual uncoordinated routine of jackets and keys and tossing phones on the kitchen counter, I turned to him and said, "I think we should throw a party." He looked at me, mid-stretch. "What kind of party?" "A few friends, some drinks, a way to say, we're doing this thing." His face lit up. "Like a coming out but not really party?" I shrugged. "Like a we're not hiding this anymore party." He walked over, kissed me, then nodded. "Let's do it." So we planned something small. Just a handful of our closest friends, some snacks, music, and beer. Nothing big, nothing dramatic, but still something. And on the night of the party, standing in our kitchen, watching Luca laugh with my best friend while waving a bag of chips in one hand and gesturing with a wine glass in the other, I realized something else. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a pact made on a rooftop by two kids who didn't know what they were promising. This was real. It wasn't the life I imagined at 20. It was better. The party was simple. Nothing flashy, Just our closest circle packed into our small apartment. A playlist of mostly early 2000s pop punk playing through the Bluetooth speaker and the unmistakable scent of garlic knots and cheap craft beer in the air. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't curated. But it was us. Luca somehow became the unofficial host halfway through, floating between groups, filling drinks, telling stories from college like he hadn't rehearsed them in the mirror. Every time I caught his eye from across the room, he gave me this look, half smile, half something softer, like he was still surprised to be here, like he wasn't taking it for granted. At one point, Sarah pulled me aside in the hallway while Luca was entertaining a group with a dramatic retelling of the time we accidentally set off the fire alarm freshman year. She raised her eyebrows at me. "So, he's really staying?" I nodded. "Like staying? "I think so," I said, the words still strange on my tongue. "He hasn't brought up going back to Boston in weeks. He's looking for jobs here." Sarah gave me this slow grin, arms crossing. "Look at you, Mr. Domestic." I didn't plan this. No one ever does. That's the best part. We were interrupted by Luca shouting my name from the living room. "Hey! Come explain to everyone how you nearly got us banned from the dorms for stealing cafeteria trays to use as sleds." "I'm not explaining anything. That was your idea." He was grinning at me, eyes shining. "Yeah, but you were the one who took the fall for it." I shook my head and walked over, letting him grab my wrist and tug me down onto the armrest beside him. His arm slipped around my waist automatically like it belonged there. And maybe it did. The night blurred in that golden way parties sometimes do. Laughter, flashes of movement, friends leaning in close to say things over the music, the clink of glasses, Luca's hand finding mine and squeezing once, just because. Later, after everyone left, we sat on the couch in the soft glow of the kitchen light, surrounded by empty cups and half-eaten snacks. Luca leaned against me, tired but buzzing. "That was nice," he said. "It was. I like your friends. They like you." He shifted, looking at me. "You think they think it's weird? Us, getting together after all this time. Maybe. But they also think it's kind of perfect." He smiled. "Do you think it's perfect?" I hesitated, not because I wasn't sure, but because I wanted to answer it right. "I think it's real," I said, "and better than anything I imagined when we made that promise." Luca leaned in and kissed me, slow and soft. "You're getting good at the sentimental stuff." "I've been practicing." He laughed, and it echoed in the quiet room. Eventually, we left the mess for tomorrow and made our way to bed. He fell asleep fast, curled toward me, one arm tossed across my chest. I lay awake a little longer, staring at the ceiling, heart full in a way that made sleep feel like a waste. We were past the point of pretending this was temporary, and the more I let that sink in, the more everything else faded. My old fears, my doubts, all the stories I told myself over the years about how this couldn't happen, how he couldn't feel the same way. They were all gone now. In their place was this, his quiet breathing beside me, the soft weight of his arm across my ribs, and the steady warmth of his body anchoring me to something solid for the first time in a long time. 2 months passed before either of us said it. Not because we didn't feel it. It was there, in the way he poured my coffee without asking, in the way I folded his clothes even though he always rolled his eyes at it. It was in every time he waited up for me when I worked late, and every time I rubbed his back when he got that knot in his shoulder he swore was definitely a tumor. But neither of us said it. Until that night. We were walking back from dinner, just the two of us. It was still spring, but the air had that early summer weight to it, thick and humid in a way that made you sweat, even when the sun had dipped. Luca held my hand the whole walk home, thumb brushing lazy circles into my skin. We weren't talking about anything serious. He was rambling about how Chicago pizza is superior, and I was half-heartedly arguing just for the fun of it. But then he stopped walking, right there on the corner of our block. He tugged me gently toward him, out of the way of a couple jogging by. What? I asked, smiling. He looked up at the streetlight, then back at me. This feels like a moment, he said. I blinked. A moment? He nodded. The kind I'll remember. And I swear my heart started pounding in a way it hadn't since college. I love you, he said, just like that. No build-up. No dramatic pause. I've been wanting to say it for a while. I didn't want to pressure anything, but I do. I love you. I stood there for a second, completely still, because even though I knew it, felt it, it still hit me like wind in the chest. Then I laughed. It just came out. Not because it was funny, but because I'd wanted to say the exact same thing for days and kept chickening out. I love you too, I said, stepping closer. He grinned. You sure? I've known since the night you showed up with a crushed cupcake and made fun of my flannel. That was an ugly shirt. I kept it. Oh, God. We kissed right there under the streetlight, and even though it was cheesy and probably made someone passing by roll their eyes, it didn't matter. It was ours. In the months that followed, we found a new apartment. A place with 2 bedrooms, even though we never used the second one except for storage, and the occasional we need space movie night. We adopted a rescue dog, a goofy brown mutt we named Bruce, like we always said we would. He was part pit, part everything else, and chewed through 3 pairs of my shoes before we trained him. Luca got a remote gig doing editorial work for a magazine. I picked up new clients, started actually organizing my calendar, we cooked together, fought over what to watch, argued about paint colors, made up, laughed a lot. It wasn't perfect. It was real. And on our first anniversary, our real anniversary, not the pact, we went back to that rooftop where it all started. We brought wine and a better cupcake and sat under string lights like nothing had changed and everything had. I handed him a small box. What's this? He asked. Relax. It's not a ring. Damn. Got my hopes up. Inside was a silver key. To the apartment. Our apartment. He stared at it, then looked up at me. You're already letting me live there. Yeah, but this one's official. No more staying as a guest. Luca smiled, held up the key and said, Guess I'm not going anywhere. Good, I said, resting my head on his shoulder. Neither am I. And maybe we weren't the type of people who got it right the first time. Maybe we had to go through all those years apart to find our way back. But we kept our promise. And the funny thing is, after all the years, all the timing, all the doubts, it turns out 30 was exactly the right time after all.